On mic today, we have Chris Cornell, better known as Sampo to most of the MST3K fandom. How are you doing this fine day?
I am doing okay.
Now, we've bumped into each other here and there on the internet throughout the past couple of decades because we're both in the fandom. I can't imagine how many fans you must have spoken to over the years, though.
Oh, I would guess thousands. I mean, I went to both conventions, so that alone.
The days of Usenet, the days of the paper newsletter.
Yes.
Starting
with the paper newsletter,
yeah,
and which we had nothing to do with. That was just that was Best Brains. But then in '97, when they wanted to get rid of the paper newsletter, they contacted us because of the site that we had then called Misty News,
mm-hmm.
We had been fair and reasonable with them, and we hadn't put anything on our site that was going to be, embarrassing to them or anything like that. So they felt they could trust us with doing a website. And of course, websites were just coming into being at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they let us take over and take the name Satellite News for our site.
That is very generous. I mean, compared to how some IPs keep a tight grip on all their information, that they would just say, hey, we don't have time or money to do this, why don't you guys just run it? That just shows what kind of a group the MST3K crew really is.
Yeah, and it's funny you should say that. This is a interesting story. They when Sci-Fi Channel canceled the series,
mm-hmm.
and then of course they took all of their stuff that they had done on their website for the Mystery Science Theater section of
mm-hmm.
their website. They took all of that off the site,
mm-hmm.
And we asked if we could have it,
mm-hmm.
And we'd pay for it, and they said, "Oh, no charge, just take it."
Nice.
Well, to me, a very short-sighted decision, but I was happy they did it.
I would be as well. I mean, Sci-Fi Channel, we all have our opinion on how they handled that, but the day they announced that the show was going away, and the day that it was clear that MST3K didn't have a long-term home there, I went to their website and saved every single page as an MHT file onto a CDR, which was very, very new at the time.
Right.
And so that was like I made a huge backup of the entire Sci-Fi Channel site because what if nobody else does this? What if I'm the only person to think of this?
Well, we got you can see, and the other thing we did, of course, was pay the cast members to write up season 7 in the form of the episode guide, so that and later on they did it for Sci-Fi Channel for seasons 8, 9, and 10. But season 7 had never been done, so we on the staff pooled our money and managed to pay everybody so that those are on our site, the descriptions of each of those episodes.
I remember that. I'm so glad you guys did that. It's a little attention to detail there that really made Satellite News what it was.
Well, Misties are nothing if they're not completionists.
Mm-hmm.
And well, obsessive completionists in some cases.
I've actually gone ahead and said that your site, because if you, on the audio portion of this podcast, we have a geek resources section, and I've recommended your site simply because it is the best MST3K site out there, even, I would say, above and beyond the actual one.
Well, we...
Not to compete, but...
Not at all. I would say that's mostly... I would accept that, except we're still a little... With some of the legacy sections of the site, we're still a little behind, and they still need to be rewritten, and I'm working on that now. I am between gigs, as they say these days. And by the way, if there's anyone in northeastern Pennsylvania who needs a writer or editor, please contact me at MST3Kinfo.com. Just a commercial there.
No, you'll plug away.
But in any case, the site needs some fixing and some updating, and during my free time that I've suddenly had here, I have the time. I've been doing it, and slowly but surely we are fixing and upgrading. For example, the episode guide is now complete. It has an entry for every single show. So that's something one of the things we've done recently.
So if you had a dream gig pass your way, what would that look like? What kind of thing would you get after handling satellite news? What else could you sink your teeth into?
Boy, I don't even know. I don't even know.
Fair enough.
You mean in terms of just like, I'm not even sure what you're asking.
Well, okay. So you say you're between gigs, and in your next gig you're available for. I'm just kind of seeing where one would go. What would be the ideal project for you?
Oh well, I think it would be web development.
Okay.
I think it would, but I'm open to the topic. There's a lot of things that I'm interested in, and I'd be or I could learn to be interested in, depending
Sure.
on.
One of
but
those
I think
things
web content and web development would be the area that I would find most interesting.
Sure. And the thing about web development is, and a lot of people don't really understand it from an HR perspective, that it's one of those things that you might have a lot of experience in it, but you might not have experience in another realm of it. But that doesn't mean you couldn't get that experience if you gave yourself a weekend and a lot of coffee. You could have that experience very,
Yes.
very quickly.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. A weekend and a lot of coffee is something not like I haven't done that before.
Right, exactly. I mean, the satellite news was a labor of love for you guys, and it shows a lot of love.
To both Brian and myself, Brian Henry, my website partner. We both felt it was just the best thing on TV, and that even a kind of dull episode was better than just about anything else on TV. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the attitude we had. And so when we started the first website, Misty News, back in, I'm going to say 94, 95. It was an AOL website. Mm-hmm. And we just wanted to do things like an FAQ that I was happy with, and because I wasn't really happy with the Usenet FAQ, and when I sent some suggested changes to the guy that was running the FAQ, and he very politely told me to pound sand, and but we wanted to go ahead and do our own FAQ on our own site, and that's how really the Misty News got started. And because we just really wanted to make sure. One of the things we had discovered is that, and I guess it's true of a lot of shows now, but we were amazed at how often people were just making stuff up about the show. I even remember, I bet most people don't, Ain't It Cool News had picked up a completely false story about Mystery Science Theater, saying they were going to riff one of the Batman movies, and it was all over like the front page of their site. And I was able to contact the people at the show and say, "Is this true?" They said, "No, it's not true," and I was able to get that. That's the sort of thing, people just make stuff up. Mm-hmm. And now I guess that's true of probably a lot of shows now with the internet, with the social media. I guess that's more true. But back then it was a surprise to us that people would do something like that. So we really felt like it was a good place to settle rumors and to inform people. When the show was on the air, we were posting a schedule every week with things like that. So just generally being useful. That's the main thing. I mean, I'm a newspaper reporter at heart. Mm-hmm. That's what I've always been, a news writer, newspaper reporter and writer. And so when I originally wanted to what I was actually thinking about doing when we first did the Misty News. What I was actually thinking about doing a zine. I don't know if you remember zines.
I do.
That it was very funny because zines came out just before the World Wide Web did, and they were very popular. Then suddenly the World Wide Web just sucked all that content onto the internet rather than having people pay postage. So that was that was but I was originally considering some kind of a Mystery Science Theater zine, and then the web came along, and that sort of saved me a lot of money.
Yeah. And I remember you talking about how it was originally an AOL page. And for people who are a lot younger than you and I, they might not realize there was a moment in the mid-'90s when AOL was its own specialized network only for its own customers. And you had to pay them a monthly fee to get that content. And the rest of the World Wide Web was kind of like a bonus to them. So it was years before the two kind of merged and became one big happy world.
Yeah, and all those chat rooms went away. Whenever there was anything, anything bad happened on the internet, somebody killed somebody after they met on the internet or something like that, it was always an AOL chat room at the base of it. And for the longest time, people were really spending a lot of time in those AOL chat rooms, and I was one of them. It was a Mystery Science Theater site that was there for years and years and years and years. But then of course they had the web thing, and that's the other thing, is that they had a very user-friendly website builder technology, so that you could get on there and make a rudimentary web page in no time flat.
And I'll just point this out. I'm actually from northeastern Pennsylvania myself. I live in Oklahoma right now. But when I was out there, AOL didn't really have a presence in my particular town, which was the only reason I didn't use it. And I think that was where they dropped the ball in not ever getting bigger than they were. They didn't get.
Well, no, they didn't have a local phone number for you to dial in on your modem.
Right.
Right.
And they lost, and that, I think, was they wanted to be the main internet provider for the country, but they never wanted to reach beyond the big cities.
Right. They just they can only have so many phone numbers, so you would probably have ended up having to call long distance. Remember long distance?
Yep.
But then that way you could have connected, I suppose. But that would have been rather expensive.
It would have been, and we did try it for a little bit, but the phone bill, as you can imagine, was not something we needed every month.
Sure. Before AOL, there was Prodigy. I don't know if you remember Prodigy.
I do.
It was actually a fairly lively MST3K bulletin board on Prodigy. That I still know a couple of those people. I'm still friends with a few of those people. And it was very interesting. It was the TV bulletin board listing was alphabetical, and we were right after Murphy Brown. And we would get down to the end of each of the messages and all the replies, and you'd get down to the next one, to the next show, and you could go back up, and by then everybody had replied on the bulletin board, so that you could go through it again and again and do that for hours. And a lot of people did. And then Prodigy made the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes in the history of the internet, which is they began to charge hourly for the bulletin.
Yeah.
And it was something I was calling the Great Prodigy Diaspora. People just fanned out. That's when AOL really started to become big, and a lot of people started going to CompuServe, and people started showing up on Usenet, and everybody, and Prodigy was dead in a year.
And that's what we don't really see these days in the social media and mobile apps, is that when you were just using text and just swapping ideas back and forth, content grew very, very rapidly, and it was a lot more structured than it was now. You could have actual discussions that could be books within weeks, because people would just sit there and use their actual thoughts, which is kind of an art we've gotten away from. Yeah,
I think that it was mostly just wisecracking, on Prodigy and AOL, but there was a lot of discussion. The Usenet news groups were terrific, and there was a lot of people who also wanted to be helpful, and not today where people try to not be helpful.
Right. Less said about that's better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you were to, there's a Google Groups, which I've also recommended as part of the Geek Resources. You can go back and check out those old archives of Usenet discussions, and you'll see people writing long-form conversations, spell-checked, proper punctuation. They actually write it like a formal letter. They put their real name and address, which is not that great of an idea, but they weren't afraid to. It wasn't like a terrible thing at the time.
No, yeah, a lot of people who were academics. They just putting your name and address on your email was or on your post was just sort of standard form. But yeah, they it was an interesting that people were really anxious to be part of a community, and that's why the big Joel versus Mike flame war of late '93 sort of hurt things a lot because it was a really tight community until that time.
And I brought that up on occasion in other MST3K groups since then, when people will say, who's your favorite, Joel or Mike? And I'll always start out by saying,
my answer is Brian's answer is actually, I think he originally thought of this one. He always says yes, and that's my answer as well.
There was a time that question was not asked in polite conversation. You were asking for trouble.
Yeah. Oh, and on AOL it was actually banned.
Really?
Yeah. You were actually it was actually your post would be removed and you'd be like warned by the authorities.
Yeah, it was that serious.
Yeah.
When do you think that kind of died off? When did it become okay to talk about it?
I think it happened mostly when Mike, when the show went through kind of a dark period in the first half of season 8, and when the second half of season 8 began to really they had a couple of just classics, and I think people began to come around. And what we were left with is a few sort of dead enders, but for the most part. People somewhere around Giant Spider Invasion, I think was where people started to accept Mike and just be used to him.
I agree to that. And when people always come to me and say, this is my opinion because Joel was better, I say, well, you're welcome to your opinion. I don't mind that. But
yeah,
you have to realize Mike was writing Joel's lines, so it's not as cut and dried as you're making it out to be.
Yeah, and some people knew that, and some people didn't, and but there was a pretty rough period where people were really. It seems silly now when you think about it.
Sure.
It seems ridiculous, but people were pretty serious about it at the time, and it just shows you what a devoted base the fan base the show had. Not a very huge fan base, but very loyal and very interested.
Yeah, it's such a brainy show that it encouraged you to think about it a lot, to ponder it, and to get passionate about it, rather than just kind of passively watch it and move on to the next thing.
Have you been noticing, mostly on Twitter, you can see it, there's a lady who is doing the annotation, MST3K annotation, episode by episode, reference by reference.
It's amazing you were to bring that up. I had Rebecca Hansen on a couple episodes ago, and I mentioned that to her, and it blew her mind. Annotated MST. So this is the second shout out they're getting on this show.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And,
great idea.
I read them a lot, and occasionally I get a chance to correct something, but not often.
Yeah, it's the MST3K, and I brought this up on the previous episode. It is the most rewatchable show because there are so many things that you might not get now, but you might get a year from now when you read the right book, hear the right song, play the right game.
Oh yeah, although the psychic lawn dart, I believe, is what Kevin called them, where you you suddenly have this realization of a riff from years ago. I was last night I was watching IFC. They're showing episodes at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Good for them.
An actual cable channel with commercials, and it just comes on at 1 o'clock in the morning. It just came on, and I'm watching. It was Bride of the Monster, and and it was, they would go to the commercial break, and there would be commercials. It was just like '94.
Yeah, staying up watching Comedy Central till 2 in the morning because I was 12 years old and really had weird discipline, but that's just different. Yeah, good old times. I don't want there to ever not be MST3K on the air.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there, it wasn't for so long. For about 8 or 9 years, it wasn't, and now it's on about 5 different places, and if you got streaming, there's like 3 or 4 more. And I was stunned that IFC, that's the closest thing. There's some speculation on our site among some commenters that this may be a trial run to actually bringing it back in prime time, which would be amazing.
Obviously, I would love that. I'm choosing not to jinx anything.
Yeah, so, seriously.
Yeah, but obviously it going away again, never coming back is not what I want, and I have a couple of theories as to how it could come back. But I'm sure Joel has something in his pocket.
I'm sure he's working on it, and I have every expectation that he'll figure it out. In the meantime, it's on. I can't even remember all the places it's on streaming. You can go to the Shout channel and watch episodes there. Then there's Pluto that runs them, but you have no control over them. It's just whatever's on. You have no control, and they just sort of stop for 5 minutes sometimes. I'm not quite sure why that. And then there's like this filler that just sits there on the screen, and then it comes back to it. But it's the Pluto feed is a little weird. But there's a number of them. There's a number of these channels that all have the show running, and now it's just a matter of because Shout did all that work getting the rights to all these movies. They can do it, and they can't run them all, but they can run a lot of them. And any chance for me to see it? I was watching Bride of the Monster last night, and I don't know if you remember the bit where the two women, the reporter and the secretary, are talking, and every time there's one angle, she has a pencil in her ear. And every time the other angle, the pencil's gone.
It's back. It's back. It's gone. It's back.
I was just watching that last night and remembering that my now 30-year-old daughter, who was about 6 at the time, was watching that and just rolling on the couch with laughter, because she just thought that it was just so funny, and it was a nice memory, but my little one who's now far away.
Yeah. And that's a great way. Another thing we brought up on the show before is that the show, because it's relatively clean humor and has such a universal premise, my 5-year-old daughter can watch it and my 80-year-old grandmother can watch it, and anywhere in between, and we all get something different out of it. Absolutely.
The kids love the puppets. The 50 or 60-year-olds go, oh, I remember, and they get up the really obscure references, and everybody kind of gets a different point of view of things. And it's about I think it's recommended for kids. Every once in a while, you see that online somewhere. Somebody asks, "Is it okay? Do you think people think it's okay to let my kids watch Mystery Science Theater?" And I say absolutely. It teaches critical thinking and all those kinds of things. It's attention to detail. For a while here in Scranton, I was doing a thing where I was showing episodes at a venue in downtown Scranton,
Mm-hmm.
and I accused my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a do you know the recurring gag with that every time they go out the door and they have the pictures of the ducks on the wall behind them. People, I was, it was during a break, and I said, "Does everybody know what the quack quack is?" And people were going, "No, I don't know." You have to pick up on these little details. It rewards your ability to do that.
Yes, it's not a show you can just mindlessly sit and leave on in the background. You have to focus and commit.
Well, you can't be ironing in the next room.
Right. So yeah, that's another reason the kids could definitely enjoy, because it's something that they can actually enjoy and do constructively, rather than just rotting their brain in front of, PewDiePie videos on YouTube. And I don't even know who that really is. I know the name, but
it's been a long time since I've seen any kid TV.
Well, apparently he's this person on YouTube who just makes these waste of time videos. So
I see.
I don't want to be down on somebody else's work.
I spend even less. I have a YouTube channel. I never update it, except for like once a year. And but what I have on there is some bumpers from the Comedy Channel, for shows from the Comedy Channel, like Rachel Sweet, mm-hmm. and some of those from the old Comedy Channel, which is before Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. And they have some pretty good shows. I have what was the name of the show? There was a couple of them that were real good, and I have the bumpers for those shows on my YouTube page. It's one of the few things I haven't. And once a year I do an in memoriam for the people, for cast and crew members who have passed that year. Mm. But that's about the only thing I do on YouTube, and I don't read much.
Got to look that up there, and obviously you're going to be on our page now that we're doing this recording here. And that's
I will say I do like Everything Wrong With, mm-hmm. that series. I do enjoy that. That's one of the few YouTube shows I'm a regular fan of.
I definitely want to say, reminding myself of the early Comedy Channel and Comedy Central era, Comedy Central had a much more, I would almost say, highbrow approach than they do now, because when MST3K was on, you had Kids in the Hall, Monty Python. The sketch comedy was a much higher bar than they've set with some of their programming in more recent years.
Yeah, I think so. I don't watch a lot of Comedy Central. It's just not my speed. It's definitely aimed at a younger audience than I am, mm-hmm. And that's how I feel about it. I don't really. It doesn't really feel like it's aimed at me.
Yeah. But if we can go back to the other things, you mentioned you were at the conventions, back when they had conventions, and it's been decades since then. What were they like? What was that experience like? It was before MST3K fandom as we know it today.
Well, it was the first one was September in 94. And it was at a hotel in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And there were about 2,000 people. And I think there could have been more, but the hotel couldn't hold anymore. But they and what was funny was the hotel didn't get Comedy Central. And there was an episode that weekend, and a new one, and I had to find somebody who I could, they could drive home, get in the car and drive home so that we could watch it on their TV at home. No, it was fun. They had tours of the studio, and they had a souvenir shop that a merchandise shop that the line spread was like half a mile long, and in the hotel there was just this enormous line, and they had a nice sort of keynote address. with Jim Mallon, and everybody was there except Joel. And there was a lot of interesting people. It was fun, and everybody seemed to get along. They had a wonderful big party. They did a live show in downtown Minneapolis of This Island Earth, the first riff of that, and then they bust everybody back to the hotel, and they had a party until about 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was a big costume party. Everybody came in costume.
I've seen some of the pictures.
I was not Ilya Mormons. I was not Sinbad. That was my official title of my costume. That's not Sinbad. Yeah. It was quite an event. And the second one was in '96, and unfortunately, it was opposite WorldCon, which was the same weekend, and something else I forget. DragonCon, I think, maybe. I'm not sure, but it was opposite it was like Labor Day weekend, and it was opposite a couple of other conventions. So there was, and plus the other thing was that it was right after Trace had announced he was leaving, and some people, as a result of all of this, the population of the thing was not quite as large as it might have been. But it was fun, and they had a lot of they had celebrities. They had they had a bunch of people there. It was lots of fun, and again they had tours of the convention and things like that, and celebrities of various types. When Joel was here in Scranton at doing his one-man show thing that he was doing years ago, they said Joel admitted that he had forgotten that I've forgotten more than he knows about Mystery Science Theater, and you just saw me do it.
I believe that. Now I have to ask this just because my personal curiosity. When you have Joel in Scranton, do you get him some Snaps pizza?
I didn't. He was up to. He was responsible for his own pizza.
Ah, okay. But, well, fair enough. I'm hungry for it now. That's why I have it on the brain.
Kim Cattrall was who I was trying to think of. She was one of the guests. Kim Cattrall. Okay. And also the Russell, the guy who was the professor on Gilligan's Island, and who was in This Island Earth.
Yeah, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but
Russell something, or I can't remember. But anyway, and so that that was that kind of thing. They had the kid who played from the Teenage Strangler, the kid who played didn't steal no bike neither.
I did.
That guy was there as well, he had a lot of interesting things to tell about the making of that movie.
Now, I kind of wonder, have you had the experience of going up to some of the bigger people who have been on MST3K, like a Kim Cattrall or a James Earl Jones, and talking to them and saying, I know you were in these Oscar-winning productions, but I really know you from this B movie. And how is that conversation going?
I know Kim Cattrall will be delighted with that, because she was. I don't know if you know the story about how they found out about the fact that Trace was singing about her on TV.
I did not know that.
The story goes that she and her husband had checked into a hotel somewhere and turned on the TV. And the TV happened to be on Comedy Central, and they happened to be doing that sketch, and it happened to be showing. And so they turned on the TV, and there is the puppet singing about her. And they're like, what's happening? I always thought that was a great story.
The story of Jackie Ray Naiman finding out about the Manos being on by just flipping on the TV is amazing. If you've read her book or talked to her about it, which I'm sure you have, she was on a couple episodes as well.
Yeah, I asked Kim Cattrall about any memories she had about City Limits, and she couldn't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
She said what I remember was there was a dog food factory about half a block away, and the place stunk. The whole that was, but that was like the only memory she had.
I could see that, and there were a couple people where it's like, I'd like to get Kim Cattrall on here and be like, yeah, but I really want to talk about City Limits and Star Trek VI. Is that okay? I watch Sex in the City, but you talk about that all the time. I want to talk about Star Trek VI. Can we do that?
I really don't know what she'd have to say about City Limits.
I'd give it a shot, but what can I say?
But
well, hey, I know you're a busy guy, and I know you're still going to go back and work on the website, but where can we follow you from here on out? If somebody wants to keep tabs on you, where can they do that?
Well, I'm on Twitter at msampo, MSAMPO on Twitter. So that's and I'm usually making fun of people or something. Beyond that, we update the site. We're going to update the site whenever there's news, and so MST3Kinfo.com is always a good place to start your day on the internet. At very least, you will see every morning this date in mystery, birth dates and death dates of everybody involved with the show. So. And that's most of it right now, anyway.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here. I'll be glad to have you back anytime because we are definitely two kindred spirits when it comes to this show. I really appreciate the chat.
No problem at all. I was happy to do it.